And it's Mlb the Mlb News back with another video. And today, the playoffs are set. We know the first round matchups for the playoffs. So in this video, I'm going to be doing my postseason predictions. So if you like this kind of content, don't forget to drop a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you'll get notified whenever I upload a video. Link to my other channels in the description below. Let's go ahead and get into this video. We'll start off with the first round, and we'll start off in the AL. For the AL, we've got the number 1 seed Rays going against the number 8 seed Blue Jays. In this series, this is a tough series for the Blue Jays, but I see I definitely see that the Rays will have trouble in this series. Ryu's good as a number 1. It's just after that, it's kind of iffy. And that's probably going to be the problem in this series, if you ask me, for the Blue Jays. I just don't think they're I just don't think they can beat the Rays in this first round with the way that their starting pitching goes from Ryu kind of downhill a lot. And the Rays, they're going to be putting out Glasnow, Snell, and Morton. The top 3 I wouldn't want to face that if I was the Blue Jays. That's about the best top 3 you can get. You could argue Cleveland has a good top 3 too, or the White Sox even. Next series, the Rays will move on in that series. Next is Cleveland versus Yankees. Cleveland, they're a team that I think any team should watch out for in the AL, and I say that because I think Game 1 is going to be a really good game to watch, because you're obviously going to have Cole versus Bieber. That's going to be a great matchup. Arguably 2 of the best pitchers in the AL this year. I think if a top 3 can stop this Yankees hitting, it's probably Cleveland. You've got Plesac, Bieber, and whoever else they would put out there. Carrasco is their number 2. So that's pretty good. Obviously, Carrasco went with them to the World Series. Bieber hasn't had any playoff experience. But they're still a very good team. So I would watch out for Cleveland. And next, Cleveland will move on in that series. I think the Yankees get upset in the first round for their lack of starting pitching. And Cleveland's starting pitching is going to be really good. Next is the 3 seed Twins versus the 6 seed Trash Can Bangers. In this series, this is a tough series for the Trash Can Bangers. I do not like the Trash Can Bangers in this series a lot. I predict this series to go to 2 games. Obviously, it's a 3-game series. I think this game will be a sweep by the Twins. This is a nightmare scenario for the Trash Can Bangers. Their hitting's good, but they have no pitching. That's a problem. Number 2, A's versus number 7, White Sox. In this series, this is an interesting series, but I'm actually going to go for the upset in this series. With Matt Chapman not playing for the Oakland Athletics, that's going to be a big L for them, obviously. But I see the White Sox maybe gone. I think they have a better starting pitching than the A's do. With Keuchel, Giolito, and Crotchett's a good weapon too, who just got drafted this year. He could be a bullpen piece. He can throw over 100. He could probably be the closer. You've got Colmy in that bullpen. And I think the White Sox win this series in an upset. So that's the AL first round. Let's go ahead and move on to the NL first round. And in the NL first round, we've got the number 1 seed Dodgers versus the number 8 seed Brewers. In this series, I think it's a sweep. I think the Dodgers win this one very easily. Buehler and Kershaw in those first 2 games are just terrifying for the Brewers. I mean, yikes. Next is the 4 seed Padres versus the 5 seed Cardinals. And in this series, it's a very interesting matchup because for both teams, you've got Lamet and Clevenger out for the Padres, and you've got Martinez and Hudson out for the Cardinals, and that's both of their starting pitchings are not great at all. Obviously, San Diego will still have Chris Paddock. Wainwright, who has a lot of playoff experience, will be there for St. Louis. But I think in this one, I'm going to go with the Padres. Obviously, they're going to not have Eric Hosmer, most likely. That's going to be tough. But they've got Machado and Tatis, two of the probably top 5 in MVP voting. That's a great hitting, and I think it's going to be rough for the Cardinals in this series. It goes to 3 games, but the Padres win. 3-seed Cubs versus 6-seed Marlins. Obviously, the Marlins surprised everybody this season, and good for them. But you've got the Cubs, which I think are the better team here. I think everybody can agree on that they are the better team. Marte was a huge pickup for them, and I think they had a great season in their rebuilding. Obviously, you're going to have to face Sixto Sanchez, Lopez, and Alcantara for the Marlins. But for the Cubs, you're going to have to face Lester, Darvish, and Hendricks. Both have a lot of, all 3 of those have playoff experience, quite a bit of it actually. And that's why I see the Cubs moving on. Next is the 2-seed Braves versus number 7 Reds. This is a series that I did not want to have happen for the Braves. This was definitely a nightmare scenario, I thought, for the Braves. You're going to have to face Bauer, Gray, and the number 3 is probably Castillo. Castillo being probably the worst out of the 3 this season. Bauer's the NL Cy Young, probably. I personally think he's the NL Cy Young. But, this is going to be a tough series. The bullpen does lack a little bit for the Reds, but the hope that the real hope for the Braves for me is the fact that they don't start hitting in the first 7 innings. Like, they're not relying on the first 7 innings. They don't hit in the first 7 innings whether you're facing one of the worst pitchers in the league or one of the best pitchers in the league. So in the 8th and 9th inning, you could possibly get like a Archie Bradley and Amir Garrett. Both are dangerous, but you can't pitch those same players 3 straight times. So I'll take the Braves in this series in a 3-game series. Next, let's go ahead and move on to the second round in the AL. In the AL, in the second round is going to be Rays Cleveland. This is going to be a great series. Rays, they are really, really good. And I think the Rays are going to have a bit of a tough time in this series. Obviously, this is a 5-game series, and I think this series will go to 5 games, and the Rays move on. Next is the Twins versus the White Sox. In this series, this is obviously a division matchup, I guess you could say. And in this series, Twins-White Sox, I like the White Sox in this series. I think the White Sox move on. And let's go ahead and move on back to the NL. In the NL, you have the number 1 seed Dodgers versus the number 4 seed Padres. In this series, this is an interesting matchup. The Padres are probably the toughest team to predict out of all of these teams, I would say, just because you don't know if they're going to have Lamet and Clevenger. And if they do have Lamet and Clevenger, I think they could possibly win this series. But I think even with Lamet and Clevenger, they could lose this series, and I will have the Dodgers moving on. Cubs-Braves. In this series, I like the Braves. And the Dodgers-Padres series will go to 4 games. I think the Dodgers just have more experience, and they're the better team. I think they're probably the better team. 3-seed Cubs versus number 2 seed Braves. In this series, I like the Braves a lot, especially if we can get contributions out of Kyle Wright and Bryce Wilson. Bryce Wilson could be like a good long reliever. If we could get contributions from Kyle Wright, that'd be really good for the Braves. But if not, then it's going to be a lot tougher. Obviously, you're going to have Friedback for the playoffs, who's been good to give you 6 or 7 innings every time he's went out there, which is good for the bullpen. The bullpen's been heavily relied on this season. Malance is not the closer, I don't think, and I think that's going to be a problem. Cubs bullpen, though, is just such a problem that once the Braves get to that bullpen, it's going to be a struggle for the Cubs, and I think the Braves move on in this series. Next, we move back to the AL. And for the AL, we've got the number 1 Rays versus the number 7 White Sox. The White Sox, they've had a great season. Probably went a lot farther than people thought. But this is where it ends. The Rays are just too good. And I think the Rays move on to the World Series for the AL. Next is we have the Dodgers versus the Braves. Braves' lack of experience, I think, is going to be a problem in this series. And for the Rays White Sox series, I think that series goes to 6 games and Rays win. Braves Dodgers, though. Braves' lack of experience is going to be a problem. Fried has pitched well in the playoffs. He's been in the playoffs before. But Wright and Anderson have not played really in the playoffs, which is going to be a big problem. Obviously, you've got a lot of bullpen players that have, and most of your players that are hitting have. But that lack of experience in the starting rotation will make a difference in this series. As much as I want to pick the Braves, I think I probably have to go with the Dodgers for experience. And the Braves starting rotation, I think, is going to have a tough time in this series. So we've got a Dodgers-Rays World Series. But for the Braves, obviously, it was a really good season. If this does happen, the Braves made a lot of progression. We moved past the first round, which is really good. Considering the last 2 years we haven't moved past the first round. But they made a big jump if this does happen. But the Dodgers' experience is the difference. As much as I want to pick the Braves, I've got to be realistic. So we've got a Rays-Dodgers World Series, and winning the World Series, Dodgers are on a long World Series drought. I think the Rays won it like in 2009 or 2010, maybe even before. I don't remember. But the Rays are really good. The Rays are going to have a tough time, though, in this series. And the Dodgers are back in the World Series for the 3rd out of 4th year. But in this series, this is a tough series for the Rays. But Morton, Snell, and Glasnow, Yarbrough, and then Morton, Snell, Glasnow again, that's going to be hard for the Dodgers. And then their bullpen's locked down too. This is going to be a series that is... this is going to be a good series. And for a World Series matchup, this would be a great World Series matchup. And for this World Series matchup, I think this series is going to 7 games. And in this series, I'm going to take the Rays winning in 7 games. I think the Rays bullpen at the end of games, I think if you pitch Morton in Game 7, and then you get like Alvarado and Anderson, that is locked down. Yeah, so those are my 2020 MLB postseason predictions. Hopefully they're right. But you can't predict everything right. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you will get notified whenever I upload a video. Thank you for watching, and I will be back with more videos soon.